When I was 12, my sister's boyfriend made fun of me for being autistic and said, "You'll end up working for someone like me." Last month, I became the lead architect at the firm he just got rejected by. I sent him a rejection letter that ended with, "You were right." Just not about who's working for who. I was 12 the first time I ever felt truly small. It was summer. My sister Anna had just started dating this guy named Trevor. He was 19, drove a black Camaro, and had that overgelled hair and confidence that makes teenage girls think they're in a movie. My parents didn't love him, but Anna insisted he was just misunderstood. He came over one evening for dinner. I remember it so clearly because that was the night he first heard me talk about buildings. I had this obsession with bridges back then: Golden Gate, Millau Viaduct, the ones in Japan built to survive earthquakes. I'd been reading about suspension tension forces all day and made the mistake of excitedly explaining it over mashed potatoes. Trevor laughed. Not the polite kind. The cruel, abrupt bark that silences a room. "Jesus, is he like, slow or something?" he said, looking around the table, like he was asking a genuine question. Anna froze. My mom dropped her fork. "I'm autistic," I said quietly. "Asperger's." Trevor made a show of nodding like I'd just confirmed a suspicion. "Well, that makes sense," he said. "No offense, dude. It's just, you talk like a robot. Don't worry though, you'll probably end up working for someone like me someday." I remember blinking. I didn't fully understand what he meant at the time, but I knew he was making fun of me. Knew it from the way Anna looked away, the way my dad's mouth tightened, the way Trevor smirked like he'd just scored points in a game I didn't know we were playing. Nobody said much for the rest of dinner. Afterward, I went upstairs and just lay in bed with my headphones on, replaying his words over and over. "You'll probably end up working for someone like me someday." That sentence embedded itself in my brain like rust under paint. I didn't cry. I just got quiet. Focused. Tunnel vision, even at that age. People think autistic kids fixate on things because they're quirky or weird. But sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's the only way to feel like you have control. I threw myself deeper into architecture, sketching, CAD tutorials, asking for drafting books for birthdays instead of toys. I stopped talking about it with people unless they asked. Trevor had made me afraid of my own excitement, but I didn't stop learning. Anna broke up with him a few months later, after he crashed her car and blamed her for distracting him. She cried for 2 days, then blocked him. He became just another bad ex. To her. But I never forgot him. I didn't see him again for over a decade. Over those 10 years, a lot changed. I studied architecture at a top university, finished my master's early, got an internship, then a full-time role at one of the most well-regarded firms in our city. I started small: assistant designer, draft checker, coffee runner, even. But I was good. I didn't talk much in meetings, but when I did, people listened. My proposals were tight. My models were solid. And my ability to see complex geometry in my head faster than most people could sketch gave me a bit of an edge. Autism, it turned out, wasn't a weakness in this field. It was an advantage. My brain saw patterns most people missed. I was tireless with detail. I didn't care for office gossip or ego games. I cared about good work. And good work rises. By 32, I was named lead architect for one of our firm's biggest ongoing urban development projects. It wasn't the top of the ladder, but it was higher than I thought I'd reach before 40. I wasn't in it for power, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel proud. After years of people underestimating me, it felt like something clicked into place. Then one day, while reviewing portfolios for an open position on my team, a junior designer role, 2 levels beneath mine, I saw a name on a resume that nearly made me drop my coffee. Trevor Callahan. Bachelor's in construction engineering. Some certifications. Spotty job history. A mediocre portfolio. But it was him. Same smug-looking headshot, just older. The Camaro probably traded in for something less cool, more practical. But it was him. And the kicker? His application letter read, "Excited to work under respected design leaders and contribute to cutting-edge civic projects." I reread that line 3 times. It hit me like a laugh. One of those deep belly laughs that come out of nowhere and leave you dizzy. Trevor, the guy who told a 12-year-old autistic kid he'd end up working for someone like him, was now applying to work under me. Not just at the same company, but on my team. He probably didn't even remember me, but I remembered everything. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. I don't think I moved for a full minute after seeing Trevor's name in our application system. I just sat there, hands hovering over my keyboard, trying to decide if this was some kind of twisted glitch in the universe or a setup by fate. My office was quiet, just the soft hum of the HVAC and the occasional click of a nearby mouse. I hadn't thought about Trevor in years, not in any focused, conscious way, but seeing his name snapped open a vault in my memory. I was 12 again, back at that dinner table, hearing his voice as he leaned back in his chair and humiliated me in front of my whole family. You'll probably end up working for someone like me someday. I could still feel the heat rising to my face, still hear the scrape of his fork against his plate, still see my sister's downcast eyes and my dad's clenched jaw. You never really forget your first villain, especially when they're the first person to weaponize your difference like it made you disposable. What made it worse was the way the world seemed to agree with him for so long. When I got diagnosed, some of my teachers thought I should be redirected to special edition. My mom fought like hell to keep me in mainstream classes. At recess, I sat alone. I wasn't good at group games or sarcasm or picking up when people were joking. Every time someone rolled their eyes when I talked about bridges or spiral staircases, I remembered Trevor's face. Like I was broken for wanting to talk about what made me feel alive. I didn't want revenge back then. I just wanted to be invisible, to make myself small enough that no one like him would notice me again. But now I had power. Now I was in charge of the decision. His future, at least professionally, rested in my hands. The irony was perfect. The universe had built the ultimate full-circle moment and handed me the blueprint. And I knew I wasn't going to waste it. Still, I didn't want this to be petty. I wanted it to be surgical. So I started digging. I pulled his full application file. His resume was weak. His work history showed frequent gaps, short stints at construction firms with little upward momentum. His portfolio had a few CAD renderings, most of which looked borrowed from standard templates. I reverse image searched one of the visuals. Turns out it was pulled from a free design mock-up site. He hadn't even done the work himself. Typical Trevor. All show, no follow-through. But I didn't want to base my decision on ego or pride. I wanted my rejection to be bulletproof. Objective. I needed to make sure, if I delivered the blow I was imagining, that no one could say I acted out of emotion. So I brought his file to HR. I don't know him personally, I said truthfully, but I have concerns about the quality of his portfolio. Some of the designs might be plagiarized. They ran their own check, confirmed what I'd already found. Strike one. Then I looked at his references. Called one, an old manager at a design build firm in Nevada. I didn't introduce myself as the lead architect, just said I was doing a standard background check. The guy laughed. Trevor? Lazy. Showed up late. Always blamed other people for mistakes. He once told a junior designer their work was retarded. I wrote him up for that. He quit the next day. Strike two. I documented it all. Every misstep. Every red flag. Not because I needed more reasons to reject him, but because I wanted my rejection letter to be made of concrete. Unshakable. And then I did something I'd never done before at this job. I requested to personally write the rejection note. It wasn't standard practice, especially for a mid-tier applicant like Trevor. But HR agreed, since I was technically the hiring manager for that project team. They asked me to keep it professional, and I promised I would. And I did. I spent hours writing that letter. The body was clean, clear, and professional. Thank you for applying. After careful review, we've chosen to move forward with other candidates. Due to concerns about originality in the design samples and negative feedback from references, we will not be considering you for future openings at this time. But then came the signature block. And just before that, I added one line. You once told me I'd grow up working for someone like you. You were right. Just not about who's working for who. I didn't sign it, Ethan, which is what most people at work call me now. I signed it, Ethan W., Lead Architect, Department 3A, Urban Design, the Holden Group. A title that carried weight. A name he'd recognize. I sent it late on a Friday, just as I was packing up to leave. Closed my laptop, drove home, and waited. Trevor's birthday was the next day. I didn't need a response. I didn't need a scene. I just needed him to read it. To know. To remember the boy he humiliated for being autistic. Now in a position to slam the door shut on his career. To feel, for just a second, what it was like to be on the other side of that sentence. And that, finally, was enough. I didn't check my email that weekend. Not once. I kept my phone on silent, left my laptop shut, and took my dog, Pinto, for a long trail hike just outside the city. I didn't want the anticipation. The rush of wondering if Trevor had seen it, if he'd responded, if he'd exploded. That wasn't what this was about. I'd built a life around logic and structure, around knowing that good work wins out over time. But Trevor wasn't about time or work or effort. Trevor was about shortcuts, bravado, dominance. He was the kind of guy who saw the world as a ladder he was owed the top of. That ladder had pulled the ladder out from under him. And that was enough for me. Or so I thought. Monday morning, I got to work early. I wanted to catch up before the rest of the team came in. When I opened my inbox, I saw it right away. An email from Trevor. Subject line, you? Seriously? I didn't open it immediately. I stared at it for a long time, wondering what 19-year-old Trevor would have said if someone told him that the weird kid from his girlfriend's dinner table would one day have the power to reject him. Eventually, I clicked. Didn't think the holding group would let someone like you make hiring decisions. Guess DI really is making a mess of everything. I don't know what kind of petty crap that message was supposed to be, but you've clearly been holding a grudge for, what, 20 years? Grow up. Enjoy your power trip while it lasts. You probably still live in your mom's basement. It wasn't creative. It wasn't even angry, really. It was small, defensive, pathetic. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to HR, just to be safe, flagged it as harassment, and asked that any future emails from Trevor be filtered. HR agreed and added a note to our records. And that should have been the end of it. But that night, my sister Anna called. We hadn't talked in a few weeks, just the occasional text or Instagram tag. She was busy with her kids. 2 of them now. Married to a gentle guy named Marcus who built custom furniture in his garage and cried at Pixar movies. A total 180 from Trevor. I answered and could tell right away something was off. Her voice was tight, like she'd been holding something in. Did you send Trevor a rejection letter? There was no accusation in her voice. Just confusion. Maybe a little pain. I took a breath. Yeah, he applied here. I didn't go looking for him. I stayed quiet. He said you added something personal to the letter. About when we were kids. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I did. There was a long silence. I never apologized, she said finally. That hit harder than I expected. For what? For not standing up for you. That night. That whole summer. I knew he was cruel to you. I saw it, and I didn't say anything. I let him make you feel like crap. Because I thought being with someone like him made me powerful. I leaned back in my chair. It felt like the floor had shifted under me. I was 13, she went on. But that's not an excuse. You didn't deserve any of that. I hadn't realized how badly I'd needed to hear those words. Not for revenge. Not for closure. Just for clarity. I never blamed you, I said quietly. I know, but I should have said something sooner. Another pause. He hasn't changed, you know, she said. Still the same guy, just with less hair and more debt. He's been through 3 jobs in 5 years. Marcus says he got kicked out of a poker league for threatening someone. I almost laughed. Some things really don't change. I guess I hoped maybe he'd learned something, she added. But apparently not. He hasn't, I said. But I have. She was silent again, and then, I'm proud of you, Ethan. That did make me tear up. I mean it, she continued. You turned everything he tried to break in you into something strong. You didn't become him. You became you. And that's way better. We didn't talk long after that. Just enough to feel like something heavy had been put down between us. I sat alone afterward, staring at the city lights from my apartment window. I thought about all the times I'd wished I could erase the way Trevor had made me feel. The shame, the isolation, the sting of being laughed at just for being me. But now, I didn't want to erase it. Because without it, I wouldn't have built the walls I did. The resilience, the drive, the obsession with craft and precision that made me the architect I'd become. He was the first blueprint of cruelty I ever saw. And maybe that made me want to design a world better than the one he represented. And I had. Not with revenge, but with bricks, with steel, with silence when it mattered and power when it counted. And that rejection letter? That was just the ribbon on the structure I'd been building my whole life. By the end of that week, I felt like the whole saga with Trevor had finally passed. I'd made my point, kept it professional, and even found a strange kind of closure in talking to my sister. There were no loose ends. Or so I thought. That Friday, I was heading into a late afternoon meeting when my assistant stopped me in the hallway. Ethan, someone named Trevor showed up at reception, she said, frowning. He says he wants 5 minutes. HR is calling security, but I figured you should know. My first reaction was disbelief. He came here? In person? This wasn't a small office. It was a 14-story glass and concrete architectural firm downtown, with badge access and a front desk. Walking into this place uninvited was like barging into a courtroom and expecting to argue your case to a judge. I straightened my blazer and made my way to the lobby. Trevor was standing just outside the security gate, still dressed like a frat boy on probation. Cheap button-down, scuffed shoes, and a smirk that looked like it was glued on to hide panic. The years hadn't been kind to him. His hairline had receded considerably, and he looked tired, puffy, like the consequences of his life had finally caught up. "You seriously came here?" I said. "I just want 5 minutes," he said quickly. "Just hear me out. HR is calling security." "Then you've got 4. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn around and let the guards walk him out. Let him get one final humiliation. But something about the desperation in his voice made me pause. So I gestured to the small lounge area by the window and said, "You've got 4. Make it count." He sat across from me and leaned forward like we were about to have some deep, bro-level heart-to-heart. "I know what I said to you back then. I was a kid. I was stupid. I didn't understand you. Autism or whatever. I thought I was being funny. Edgy. I didn't say anything." He pushed on. "And yeah, I said some things in that email. I was pissed. It was my birthday. It felt personal." "It was personal," I said, "because you made it personal 20 years ago." He held up a hand. "I get it. I do. But look, I need a job. Badly. I've got bills, my car's dying, and I've been trying to get back into design work. I know I screwed up in the past, but people change. I've changed." I looked him dead in the eyes. "You plagiarized designs. You harassed a junior employee. You couldn't even own your actions without being forced to. That's not growth. That's desperation." He flinched, then tried to recover with a weak chuckle. "I mean, come on. You got your revenge, right? You wrote the letter. You got your little win. Isn't that enough?" I leaned back in my chair. "This isn't about revenge, Trevor. It never was. It's about accountability and truth. You treated me like garbage when I was 12 because I processed the world differently. You laughed at me, mocked me, told me I'd be working for someone like you. And now, when the tables turn, you want forgiveness like it's owed." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "You didn't come here for an apology. You came for a handout, and I'm not giving you one." Just then, HR showed up with 2 building security staff. One of them asked, "Is this him?" I stood. "Yes." Trevor stood up, too, his smirk gone. "This is insane," he muttered as the guards flanked him. "You're still the same weird little kid, just with a fancier title now." "No," I said calmly. "I'm a man who built something. You're the one still acting like a child." They escorted him out. No drama, no yelling. Just the sound of cheap soles on polished tile as Trevor was led out of the building and into the humid city evening. I went back upstairs. My meeting ran late, but I wasn't thinking about work. I was thinking about how this all began with a sentence. A cruel, casual insult from a guy who never thought he'd be held accountable. And how it ended, with him begging, cornered, and finally faced with the reality that the world he thought he'd rule had moved on without him. That night, I got a text from my sister. He showed up at my place. Said you embarrassed him. I told him, "No, you did that to yourself." I smiled. For the first time in a long time, we were on the same page. She followed it with, "I'm proud of you, Ethan. Really proud." I typed out a simple response. "Thanks. I didn't do it to win. I did it to heal." And it was true. The revenge was never about hurting him. It was about reclaiming my story. About not letting the first person who made me feel small define the life I built. Trevor was a chapter, but I'm the one writing the book. A few weeks passed after Trevor showed up at the office. My world didn't change. No viral post. No grand recognition. No fireworks in the sky signaling victory. Life just continued. That was the funny thing about revenge. You imagine it'll feel like a final boss fight, like something cinematic with a soundtrack and applause. But in real life, it feels more like putting down a heavy box you didn't realize you were carrying for years. Quiet, still, freeing. And in that stillness, I started thinking, not about Trevor, but about me. About that 12-year-old kid who used to scribble house designs in his spiral notebook while trying to block out the sound of his sister's boyfriend calling him slow or robot boy. The kid who learned to mask and mimic so people wouldn't laugh. Who taught himself how to build things so he didn't have to explain himself. I wasn't angry at that kid anymore. I was proud of him. He survived. Not only survived, but turned every insult into fuel, every moment of exclusion into obsession, every jab into a sharp edge he used to carve out a place in a world that didn't come designed for people like him. That month, I got a request to speak at an industry event. The topic was designing for neurodiversity, a subtle way of asking me to talk about my experience as an autistic architect in a corporate world that often demands uniformity. I said yes. The night before the talk, I sat with my notes, realizing that for years I'd hidden this part of myself out of fear. Trevor wasn't the only one who made me feel like I needed to be fixed. So did 100 teachers, classmates, even former coworkers who'd chuckle when I missed social cues or hyper-focused too long on a draft. But not anymore. When I stepped up to the podium the next day, I didn't talk about revenge. I didn't name Trevor. I didn't need to. I talked about how the world tells autistic people to shrink themselves, to conform, to apologize. I told them about the day I got diagnosed, how my mom cried while I sat quietly, not sure why the word felt like a punishment instead of a description. I told them how architecture saved me, because buildings don't lie. They don't play games or ask you to guess what they're feeling. A wall is a wall. A beam carries weight. A design either stands or it doesn't. That clarity was everything to me. I ended the talk by saying, you don't have to become someone else to succeed. You just have to become more of who you already are, and find a place that recognizes your value before you're forced to prove it. The room went quiet. Then someone stood and clapped. Then more. It wasn't about ego. It was about being seen, truly seen, for the first time on my own terms. Later that night, I got a message on LinkedIn. It was from a junior architect at a firm across town. She was 24, also autistic, and said my talk made her feel like she didn't have to hide anymore. That she finally believed success didn't mean pretending to be neurotypical. That message meant more than the rejection letter ever did. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Trevor wasn't just a bully. He was a symbol of all the voices that tried to convince me I didn't belong. And beating him wasn't about humiliating him. It was about proving those voices wrong. About 6 months after the incident, my firm got nominated for an award for one of our urban design projects. I brought my mom as my guest. During the ceremony, she held my hand and whispered, "You built all this." I nodded. We built it. Afterward, my sister invited me to her youngest daughter's birthday. I hadn't been to many family events since the wedding, but I went. She gave me a quiet look when I walked in. "He's gone for good," she said. I figured. "You okay?" "More than okay." She handed me a beer, clinked her bottle to mine, and said, "Here's to being wrong about who's working for who." We both laughed, because that line, that sentence that lived in my head for 2 decades, it didn't hurt anymore. Now, it was just punctuation on a story I had finished writing. And if Trevor ever tells this story, which I doubt, he'll probably say I was vindictive, that I waited 20 years to make him pay. But the truth? I wasn't waiting for him to fail. I was building something, quietly, patiently, brick by brick. And when he showed up at the door, I didn't slam it in his face. I just reminded him, "You were right. Just not about who's working for who." And then I got back to work. Because the best revenge? It's building a life so good, you forget you were ever trying to prove anything.